Okay. Hi, and welcome to another conversation with three Black Pratt grads. The three of us all graduated from Pratt with degrees in photography. These are informal discussions on the many aspects of photography. I'm Kenneth Nelson. With me are Greg Cleghorn and Mark Skinner. Tonight's discussion is on our most iconic images, or better known as our signature style. And we'll start off with Mark. And I'll begin to share the screen so you can get see his image. Share.
Pratt Institute in Brooklyn. Let's just get that out there.
Yeah,
Okay,
right.
Mark.
Not the
Cool.
Manhattan one, the Brooklyn one. All right. When Ken talked to me about the idea of an iconic image, I had to look up what iconic images were because you think you know, but sometimes you don't. And I looked up the word iconic in the dictionary, and I looked up other words like symbolic and representative, and a lot of iconic images are very specific to a place and a time. And what I liked about this particular image that I created was that these young ladies were, in 2017, the New York representatives for the National American Miss Pageant. And what I had to do was create a photograph for them that represented New York and showed as many of them as I could. And I think that's all. And there may be one that wasn't there, but that's as many as I got that day. And that shows you who all of those individuals are, and they're very happy and excited to be the reigning queens and princesses of that particular pageant system in New York at that time. And I would say that is iconic for that particular group. I mean, there are a lot of photographs that, we can talk about later, but I'd say that out of my photographs, that would be iconic of what it's like for young people who win these pageants. You can go on to the next one. This particular image is another pageant winner. And this was also done a couple of years ago. This was probably 2016. And they were the winner in a local New Jersey pageant. And what happened was we went to the beach to photograph her in front of the ocean.
Tsunami.
And yeah, it was an ocean, and we really wanted to do that so that we got a sense of what New Jersey is about. People always talk about the Jersey Shore, but it's really the beach. I mean, everybody else would call it the beach; they call it the shore. But it's really it's a state that really does thrive. A good amount of the economy is based on it being a resort state, and so that was representative of the state. And we did this in a series of other photographs for that. Now, this particular one happens to be on my LinkedIn page, so it tended to represent the photographic work that I was doing for pageantry at the time, and it's on my portfolio. It's in my portfolio. You'll see it online. The next image would be one that is very, very much representative of sort of the entire scope of my photography. In this case, the model really did pretty much pose themselves a lot. We went through a series of poses, but I think this is most representative of my personal style. I started as a fashion photographer doing models, composites, and so to go 20, 30 years later practically and go back to that in New York is very much iconic for me because it's representative of all the types of work that I've done before that isn't so specific to the heroic, super happy look that I tend to do for the other pageant winners. And we did that with this winner also, but in this case, we wanted things that were a little bit more modeling inspired. And so for those of you who are familiar with a street photography aesthetic, you'll start to see little elements of that because that's what we were trained in at Pratt. You'll see the parallel lines of the banisters and how there are interesting things going on in the background. It doesn't just fall into nothingness. And so it's the full frame. It's a digital image. Previously we talked a lot about analog, but all three of these are digital images. So it's a sort of a stylistically, it's sort of representative of what I've done in the past, what I do now, and between the three, you can see the style of placing an image, placing a figure in an image, in a landscape, and just helping show them as representative of where they are.
So my question actually comes then, if I were to say, is how do you differentiate yourself from another photographer photographing the same person to make it your signature image? Is that a possibility, or is that just out of the realm of possibility?
Well, that's a really good question. I think it's a possibility, and I think it is very, very much possible if the photographer is the person who is creating the assignment. You kind of know what you want to get, and you kind of shoot in that way where you're, through the session, you're working with the model to get that image. If the model is more looking for photographs of themselves, and you bounce ideas off them, but they kind of tend to have an idea of what they want to do. So I think stylistically, I think the photographer has to be a little bit more the person who's kind of the person who's in charge of the photograph, without so much the consideration of a particular look that they want that looks like other people's photographs. If you can do whatever you want, you can get some really original stuff. But if someone's looking for photographs that look like a certain type of thing, like in the pageant photos, like the line of people walking towards the camera, you kind of know that when you're doing a pageant group, there's only so many ways you can line them up together. So if you line them in a line and you have them walk towards the camera and you have your background set, that's a surefire way to get that photograph of all of the winners together. And it's a little harder to get an original image, because if you want something, super, super original or your own style, I think it's inevitable that you put your style on it. I don't think, I think we all see very differently. And I think when you see enough of someone's work, you go, oh, that's their style.
Right.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
I'm curious as to the crop. It's definitely not like street, like Macy's fashion cropping. The second picture, she's cropped just below the bust line, and the third picture, she's cropped at the knee for a fashion shoot. What was your
Well, if you want to start with this image, one of the things that I wanted to do is I always like to think of the idea that there's plenty of room to crop. And I usually take a lot of photographs, and I also tend to do a little bit more cropping in Lightroom. But in this case, I wanted to show you everything that I did. And I know you're saying, well, you're not showing the knees. Well, I have plenty of photographs with the knees, but in this particular case, I raised the camera so you wouldn't necessarily see the length of the dress. A lot of pageant people tend to wear gowns on photo shoots. So unless you really understand the cut of the dress, it could be a full-length gown, or it could be a summer dress that goes just above or just below the knees. In this particular case, I wanted the versatility to let the person decide what they wanted to do with this image.
Well, like it looks like it could be like a green screen background, or that when you lasso the foreground and take the color out of the background. I mean,
Yeah, it
it
does look
works, but
like it, but I don't do that. I don't even really know how to do that well. I have tried that a couple of times, but I am abysmal at it. And because I started with a camera and film. all of those Photoshop, uh, cut and layer. I find that kind of stuff tedious. That kind of work very tedious. I find it very uninteresting.
No, bite your
Um,
tongue.
it's just for me. I mean, some people do fantastic work, but that's not me. For me, it's about getting a lot of images right in camera. Now, I will crop. I think I mentioned this before. I mean, I'll crop. Maybe I'll burn and dodge a little bit, but that's really about it. Clean up a few blemishes, but I don't tend to do a lot often. In this particular case, it was just a photograph. There is no green screen. I like to go to a set. I like the set, not a set, but a landscape or a set, and I like to let that inspire me in how we're going to work. In this particular case, the model knew what kind of poses they wanted to do, and that they worked with the banister, and I was just pretty much in capture mode. So for this particular,
But you intentionally darken the background. You exposed to darken the background.
yeah.
Okay.
Right, right. And I think we were talking about earlier how uh, the lighter objects tend to be where the eye goes, uh, as per Doug Gordon, the wedding photographer. So, you pick up a few things as you go along from a lot of different people. And so that was that was one of his tips for photographing brides and grooms and wedding parties. So uh, when I went to this particular photo shoot, uh, it was something I thought about and made sure that the overall illumination was brighter on the model.
Okay. For the sake of just covering everybody else, let's move on to Greg.
All
Okay.
right. All
Okay,
right.
Greg, and we'll bring up
Now,
this image and just speak to it, or speak to however you want to speak.
yeah. Brooklyn, man. I mean, just I've always liked street photography, uh, and Dorothea Lange and several other um, time life photographers, and the way they captured people. And one of the things that stuck with me from Pratt days is one of the instructions saying try to capture the human condition, and mentioned and really got into photojournalism and street photography, and that kind of stuck with me, because I would kind of see these things. I began seeing things that I didn't really pay much attention to before, or if I did see it, I didn't have the camera to capture it. Started going, walking with the camera almost at all times. Now, for me, iconic is like, if you go to Paris, you think of the Eiffel Tower. If you go to Rome or Italy, you think of the Colosseum. If I were to have an iconic image, I would want it to be one of these. Probably this one, maybe most of all, because it speaks to a sticky hot summer day in New York. You know, and the worst place for a kid to be is stuck indoors. And I really felt I saw these kids, and I really felt their pain.
Mm,
The little guy on the left, he's gone. He's like, boy, I wish I was somewhere else. You know, the guy on the right with the Bermuda t-shirt, he's ready to roll. Got his shorts on. Drawstrings are falling out, and he's looking up the block. I'm sure there was something going on there he could have gotten into. And the young man in the middle, he's looking at me like, dude, you know. And like Mark mentioned, like the trilogy of things, past, present, and the future, or the elements that make up things. All three of these kids spoke to a different part of how I've grew up in Brooklyn. Uh, Dealt with a rough summer, being stuck indoors. So um, this one, the wood frame of the window was just so textured, and that old school drape was. There was just something about the entire feel of this image that if there was some image that people would look at and say, "Oh yeah, That's Greg Claycorn's image. I wouldn't mind it being this one because I really, really enjoyed this picture. The dark space, like you were talking, the dark space and your eye being attracted to the light, and they're drawn forward. But the way that one young man is just framed in that dark space, the way he pops out, almost makes him the center of the image. But I don't know. I just love his expression and
You know
his
what I love about this? This is
yeah. Go ahead.
another picture where you've got two different things going on. You've got these two kids on the right side that, you know, they seem like this is what kids normally do. But the other kid on the left, you were saying, they're just gone, but they're gone in that way that grown-ups used to sit in windows. I don't know if grown-ups still sit in windows like that now, but
Now
I
with the
remember.
coronavirus, yeah, they do
Yeah,
that a
maybe.
lot
Yeah,
now.
right. Maybe now, but I mean,
Mm.
you were able to capture that what they call the old soul in a very young person, and
Mm.
and like I said, you have these two. And I don't mean to cut you off, but there's
Oh no, go
once
ahead.
again there's these two different uh, basically consciousnesses. They're just they're working together in the same frame, but they're very separate ideas. You can see the thinking for each child, and you're articulating it.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. This has always been, and I shot this while I was at prep, so this was one of my early attempts at photojournalism and street photography, and it still speaks to me today. All right, what's the next one I have up? I don't remember. Oh, that one. That was I like early mornings. They say you can tell the character of a city by getting out early in the morning. It's kind of true, But this morning was I was strangest things. It was a foggy morning, and it was like in Northern California, and I heard these birds flying towards me before I saw them. And if you've been out in the woods and you hear wings, the power of these wings swinging past you, it's kind of a cool moment. But they were just having a blast, and it felt like family. I was very far away. My family's in New York. I'm way out in California. And for me, not to title photographs, I don't like to title photographs. It felt like family, you know. And I always felt like that odd went out. Everybody's kind of cruising, and I'm, doing the thing with the hey, watch, check me out. Nobody's paying me any attention. But I always kind of liked um, the idea of family, the togetherness, and the again, you were saying the three levels of things. He's back there, the reflections in the water, and they're graceful, but they're just having a moment. And it was there's just something reminded me of a painting, because they came across. I got several frames of it, but it wasn't until they got low and started flying right above the water that that I caught this, and I just thought it was very, very painterly. Like reminded me of several um, impressionist paintings. And I've played around with it, within Photoshop's filters, and blew up the grain and changed the, but I kind of like the purity. Forgive me, the purity of the black and white and the simplicity of the moment. That's excuse me. If there were an iconic image, I wouldn't mind that one being one of them or the one. But I kind of like the kids first, so they're kind of close. Thanks for allowing us to show more than one image. Just one image is kind of difficult. All right, you can go to the next one. What's the next one? Oh man,
Mm.
this is another one. Sometimes you get led by the photographic gods. you know, um, no, because I'm very spiritual. I admit that. And sometimes I'll hear like the Holy Spirit's voice leading me to things, and like look over there. And I'm like, what? And this is one of those moments. I was in an area not where I shouldn't have been, but I didn't have any reason to be over there. And I'm just walking, bopping along, and bam, it's this homeless guy in the vestibule of this church. And this wall was boarded up, but then they had I won't say the nerve, but they had "believe" on there, and it spoke to me in so many ways because it's like, I've been through some rough times, I've been homeless and, all those other things. And to be able to be as low as you can be, but still believe, that spoke to me visually, and then I put it in black and white because the colors just didn't, I mean, it popped. You had this bright green, um, camping sleeper there. And the red brick was, punched it up even more. But just to keep it as stark as possible to show, that human condition again.
I think he
That's
chose
what,
well. Yeah.
as far as
I
what, what do
think
you
he
mean?
chose well. Well, I mean, with this particular image as a black and white, I mean, I think what happens is if you see the sleeping bag and it's green, it's bright green, you start judging whether or not this particular sleeping bag is it filthy enough, or is it too
Mm,
clean, or is
yeah,
it
it
too
looks like it's a
dirty?
setup. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a set
right.
picture.
Yeah, or did they, oh, how much did they pay for that to put that sign up? And I think
Mm,
in this particular case, black and white lends to the authenticity of your image. And I
mm,
remember uh, thinking about that, when I first saw this one, that it
right.
was it's very good. And
I'll take it. I'll take it. Well,
yeah,
I always, because like, yeah, everybody goes through things, and I was going through things, and I always remember that line, it's not how many times you get knocked down, it's how many times you get up, So that's what caught my eye and caught something in me about that makes this an emotional experience for it, or again, the human condition that I hope I captured. Yeah. All right. Well, is there more? Or just is that
Yeah,
just
no,
the
no, you have
iconic,
four.
iconic,
Hmm.
um, iconic images? Now this is Venice Beach, and of course, I guess every city has its, street performers and such, and this guy's a balloon maker, but I get a kick out of the street performers that in front of Man's Chinese in Hollywood, or the Elmo and superheroes in Times Square now that they're almost belligerent. Run up and almost take your wallet from you and demand, oh, give me more, and for him and him and him and him and my cousins. Like, ooh, it's kind of these aggressive street performers. But this guy, when I came up on him, he was just he seemed very introspective, and at the place, you go through life experiences. For me, being a class clown, and then, you're like, what was that song, Tears of the Clown? What was that? Was that Five Tops or Stylistic?
Smokey
Tears
Robinson and the
of the
Miracles,
Clown. Thank you.
Tears of the Crown.
Oh, and he kind of spoke to that because there's nothing funny about this fellow. He did not seem like somebody I wanted to blow up balloon from. But then, I thought about where I was and what it looked like, and I did a version in black and white. And I don't know, for some reason I felt to the need to have him looking at himself. It was like a um, time of, I'm going through that too now. In in therapy for, introspective and trying to get an idea of who you are now. Being mindful of who you are now. Yes, you were that person, but that's not you anymore. Who do you choose to be now? Like, I can be the black and white guy, I could be the color guy, but they're both kind of me. So I wanted them both in one image because um, you know, their answer is there, or his answer is with him. And um, I wanted to capture that as a, kind of a statement about, where I was at the time and how that represents so much, and I can't speak for other folks' lives, but in my life, that kind of spoke to me a lot. The uh, the clown that really doesn't have a lot of funny going on right now, but there's the potential. So, if there was an iconic image, I wouldn't mind this being one of them because, I mean, if anybody knows me, they would know that, yeah, there's something else going on. And if they don't know me, if they just look at it as, just an Instagram snapshot, yeah, fine, keep on moving. But if you look at the image, you can tell that there's a lot going on there. And I don't know who said it, but they said, you shoot what you shoot what you are, or you shoot who you are. What you capture is indicative of who you are because you see something in the image that nobody else does.
Yeah.
Or, the image that you shoot, it resonates with people because they see something in it too. That's something that's in them.
Yeah.
So,
They may not necessarily see the same story.
right, right.
As a matter of fact, one of the things is that we all bring our own garbage and our own collective conscience to each image. So, when I look at this image, I'm thinking of something totally different. Uh,
What do you see?
well, first of all, it's technical for technical reasons. You should look at an image and you look technical first, and you see what are the technical things about the image, and then this all takes place within a few seconds, and then you start to look and say, okay, am I interested in looking at the story? And then if you are, then you begin because it's all based on the grabbing of the technique or the technical side. And then someone relates to the technical side, then they immediately go into the story if they're appreciative of the technical side. And so what you've done here is you've created a technical side, which is for this particular image, is to combine black and white and color in two separate images. And so that creates some friction. And so some people want to solve the friction by trying to understand why is the friction there. Okay, and because you're not used to seeing a mirror image, or actually, if you're into movies, I guess you could conceive of the
Well,
idea of
yeah.
a mirror image in that way. But in this particular instance, you're presented with a still shot, and it's a mirror image and the duality of things. So yeah, it comes into play. But of course, the first thing for me to see is technical, and then immediately go into visceral and other areas, and like what is going on in my head, and what makes relate to that, and so forth.
Hmm. Okay.
Well, when I'm looking at this image, I see the eye line of the main figures going toward one another. And it seems like they're looking at each other like two different beings. Once again, two different planes. One's in a black and white world, the other one's in a full realized color world. But yet they're part of the same world. There's a throughput all the way. There's a string. There's a language that you're using in your photography that has a lot to do with these dualities. And the fact that these two are mirror images of one another really emphasizes that a lot. So much so that that center area that becomes like a third character to me, it reminds me of it's like my recollection of Native American totems, that the way I've seen them depicted on television and movies.
Hmm.
And so it seems like there's their wings outstretched, and there's sort of a verticality to that space that's formed right there on the line.
Hmm. Yeah.
That's reminiscent for me of that.
Hmm.
And
It's like a
I
timeline or something.
well, it's just there's just a lot of stuff that goes on, but time and time again there is this reflection between one subject and another. There's the comparison. There's always a comparison, it seems. So I'd say stylistically, although it may not seem similar to the the kids with the window. I would say that in some ways it's very much like that, because you have on one side, on the black and white side, you have one figure who seems a lot more serious. And on the right side, you have a figure who is much more free-hearted, carefree. And
Colorful? But sorry.
sorry about that. They're much more carefree. So it just
Okay.
seems like there are similarities in your images.
Okay. Something introspective in what I'm capturing.
Well,
When
yeah,
you
I
say
think so.
similarity, what do you?
I think
Okay.
when I
All
say
right.
similarities, I think what's happening is you're constructing photographs stylistically very similarly. And if you aren't capturing that initially, by the time you kind of look at your images, you're putting them together in a way that has these comparisons. Your thoughts are about, well, what's going on here versus what's here, what's here versus here, what is this idea of believing versus a guy who, or a person I should say, who doesn't necessarily have anything except for what they're sleeping in. What's the starkness of the clown on the left, the balloon salesperson rather on the left, versus the jocular world that the one on the right lives in. And it's two different windows in the same world, just like the kids. It's two different windows in the same world.
Mm. Okay. Well, thanks. I like that insight. Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, so I guess that puts it on my shoulders.
Yeah. What you got, Mr. Nelson?
Hey, okay. So for me, I've just selected one image, although again there could be more, but I chose this image as sort of as something that someone can sort of see what I would do, and and you know my images are always, at least in the last 4 years, my image is all about energy, and it's all about people, and it's all about the closeness of people, whether under extreme circumstances or whether under pleasurable circumstances. And so in this particular image, it's definitely under pleasurable circumstances, and the amount of energy being exuded is extreme, and play on design, play on people, a very diverse group of people, to say the least. So my stories are mostly about just people and how we relate to each other in public, and this is just one capture. So if there's anything that can be considered a signature style or iconic, I would definitely say that this image is really one of the most recent ones in memory that I could say that this is my style. Uh,
What is that? What does our tattoo say? Is it
it
danger or something? I can't
it's funny.
quite make it. Not that it's important, but I just thought it was kind of
No,
cool.
it's a very prominent feature, and I think I have another version of this where I can read it, but in this particular image, I can't. Uh,
Okay, no worries.
so, and the things that are intriguing for me about this is foreground, background relationships, and how you brought into the frame. And so, you got these two hands that are just outside the frame or out of focus, and they sort of just channel you in and move you around in a circular motion, and you're sort of vibing with the energy. So again, this is something I would highly consider to be something that if you saw a similar image like this, you could probably say it's almost mine, because of course everybody there's a lot of street photography happening out there now, so it's I don't know how easy it makes to capture an image like this. It may make it easier to capture an image like this, but would you include it in an edit is a question. And so this is a very unique situation on a very particular time, so it's going to be very difficult to capture this again, and so it only exists
But
once.
right,
It's not easy to
but you're
capture.
also you're also working with an event,
Hmm.
and also with an event where the people who are in the event are very much under the idea that if you want to take a photo, you can take a photo, right?
Yeah.
Right. So what I'm getting at is that this is a really, really great photograph. It's a great photograph. And I'm wondering, um, if you're not in a circumstance where there's something occurring. I mean, basically what I'm getting at is your process is to know where you're going to be, right?
Hmm.
And have an idea of the type of imagery you'll be able to create, and then work within the confines of the time and the space that you're working with,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
Right. So you're very methodical about getting to this image. It's not like you just went to the bus stop on one morning on your way to the doctor and you said, "Hey, look, there are two people dancing. Let me take out my camera and photograph."
That's not to say that that hasn't happened, because based on history, um, that's basically how I came about my Coney Island house imagery. I didn't go there when I first went there in 2004 for it. I just
Right.
stumbled upon it.
Right.
So for the most part, or at least for a major part of it, that particular day, that particular time garnered a series of images because I just happened on an event.
Right.
Uh,
But what I'm getting at is you went on a photographic expedition and stumbled upon an event that was very much akin to your aesthetic and what you're trying to accomplish as a photographer.
yeah,
Right. But
yeah.
it wasn't like you were, oh, I got to go to the doctor or I have an appointment and I just happened to see this. You made a point to go photograph. What I'm getting at is, you're a street photographer and you were going to find street work and stumbled upon this particular group, but the point was is that day you went on a mission. You consciously decided to go get photographs.
Yeah,
Right.
there's a
Okay.
conscious right, but you never know what you're going to find, and you never might,
Right.
and you may not take a photograph at all, or you may
Right.
take one and come home disappointed with no edits.
Right.
In this particular instance, this was a specific day that a specific event was happening, and I made it a point to go to this specific event because it followed through with my signature style, or an event that I usually typically go to anyway, to capture images of energy and excitement and of people, and a
Right.
conflagrance of people that I know are going to be in tight quarters. And
Right.
I know that they convey energy for either stressful energy, anxiety, or blissful energy. And no matter what energy, as long as the space is occupied to a degree where it's very tight.
Right. So your
And
so your style is in a symbiotic relationship with your subject matter in some cases.
Yeah,
Okay.
is or is not.
is
Oh,
subject.
okay.
Yeah, yeah. And when
And
one
you got to pop this in there. This, Kenny, you were like one of the humblest people I know. This Coney Island House series is amazing. And you're like, oh, I just kind of, just kind of happen to be there. This is good stuff. So there
yeah.
it is.
Now, just right now, this is not Coney Island House,
This isn't
but
Coney Island. This is Central
no,
Park.
Central
no,
Park, right?
no,
No, wait,
What
wait.
series is
no,
this?
no. This is an isolated event in Williamsburg, Brooklyn,
Okay.
a couple of years ago. But it can be considered part of that same series because it centers around dance and music. So yes, to
Mm-hmm.
that event, yes, I can see where it could be seen as that.
Okay.
One of the things about Coney Island House is really about the energy there on Coney Island. And so one of you can sort of identify a Coney Island House image, and if you could see the ground, it's almost always going to be on the boardwalk.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So that's sort of a giveaway. If it's on the boardwalk, it's a Coney Island house image. This particular image is on the ground, so it's really not part of that group. Although could be considered, I would not put it in that group. I would
Okay.
keep it separate because it's not part of that energy.
All right.
Although it could
But
fit into it, but it wouldn't.
you also did you started that series of the intimacy where people are very close. I think you should really continue that too, because in this time where everybody's so socially distanced, to see these images and everybody's, you can almost feel the heat and the perspiration on their skin, or the ones where you went even closer with the kisses and people are really breathing each other's air.
Yeah.
I think they're very effective. I enjoy the energy of these images a lot.
Yeah. All right. So, do we have any follow-up questions or anything?
Yeah, believe it or not, I should have remembered when I was talking about it. But the image of the young lady at the seashore, one of the reasons why that particular image was used on Facebook is because I used to use my logotype on the far left, and she was staring directly at it. I had it as white. It was a dropout text on the image, so
So
it was written in white.
so it's more of a calling card than an image to stand on its own.
Right. It was an image, and this particular image served a purpose in that time. It was working as the pageant pros, and the logo was right there in the sky, and so the figure was looking directly at that. That's all.
Oh. Well, I got a question for both, I guess me too, but what does it mean? Because boy, we went to Pratt in a different era, you
Hmm.
know, and now with starting in a wet lab, with the silver recovery tank everybody wanted to take home because we were all poor, um, to, digital, to, Instagram and, TikTok and all of that. What does it mean to even have an iconic image at this point in your career? I don't know, in life. What would you call it?
For me, I think the iconic images are probably created by more famous photographers. I mean, the three of us, we're talking about iconic images in a way that's referential it's self-referential. It's iconic of my style. It's iconic of my experience. It's iconic of the way I see things. But one of the most, when Ken first started talking about the iconic image, one of the things I
Say,
first started thinking of was the the that image of that Eddie Adams took of the assassination of the prisoner by the general in Vietnam.
Vietnam, yeah.
Yeah.
And I I thought about that, and one of the reasons why it's iconic is because, first of all, it was completely misunderstood. It wasn't the horrific murder; it was an
Well, it was
execution
horrific, all
after.
right.
But it was a horrific execution after. It was a retribution. In any event, it wasn't just this guy just walked up and shot someone. He was executing someone who had killed his family. Is what that's my understanding. I hope I'm not wrong, but I understand that when the truth came out, that's what it was. And uh, it's iconic in that everyone associates that with the war. And there are other photographs that have that. We associate the kiss of the sailor kissing the nurse with the end of World War II. I mean, that's so iconic that there's a sculpture based on that.
San
Uh,
Diego, yep. Right in front of the.
so it's so those are really iconic images, and I realize that there's a certain level of authenticity. There's a certain level of not only authenticity associated with it, but fame that goes beyond the photographer, that helps the image become symbolic of a particular time and place. And it doesn't have to be a street photo. It doesn't have to necessarily be a portrait. Could be iconic. I mean, there are iconic portraits of Marilyn Monroe. There are so many of them. It's obscene practically. That's just a lot, you
Right.
know. And but there are iconic images that just stand the test of time, you know.
No, but I meant,
And
what does it mean to have iconic for you? And
well, that's what we're talking about for us. I mean, there's was it Huey Newton who's got that photograph of him sitting in the big straw chair, the big high back straw chair with the beret. That's Huey Newton. Che Guevara's on every T-shirt in the East Village, at one point was him with the beret and that photograph. That's iconic.
well, I agree. Well, for me, I mean, just to have been shooting long enough to have a body of work that I could look back on and say, instead of something that I shot that I really liked, from last month or from the cross country trip, um, that I would choose something from, from the 80s, that just have the body of work that says, okay, this is, I haven't strayed too far from this. So if there's something iconic in it, that would probably be it. What about you, Ken? What does that mean for you to have an iconic one?
For me to have an iconic image, um, well, as Mark references to it, usually is associated with someone who's prominent or who has a history of notoriety beyond just our own small group. Ansel Adams would be
You have some published works too. Yeah,
yeah,
Ansel, of course.
yeah,
Oh,
but right.
Ansel, but
But the idea is that I think someone with a history, uh, an obscure history. Let's say if Vivian Meyer wasn't found, what would her imagery be? If it didn't get the push uh, that Maluf had to push it out there, right? And it only became iconic once it became known, well known beyond the small group of people. So for me, the notion of an iconic image it would be an image that can represent me when I'm long gone, that people will say, yeah, that's his image, right? So the decisive moment, Moonrise over Hernandez. Those are two. Just think about how they stand the test of time after the person's gone. And there's no way you can mistake anything else but for the person who photographed it. It is their image. So that's sort of why I would say yes. The image that I just showed earlier would be one of the images that I would say I would happily have as represent me as an iconic image after I'm gone.
hmm, okay, cool. That sounds
Now,
good.
what about for the landscape work that you do?
Different time, different era, but yeah, I mean, I could see that as being one, but I didn't show any, and there's so many that I can sort of reference that could be. But for the last 4 years and the style and the things that I've been photographing, those are a little bit beyond my thought process right now. And so I'm on this new thing about energy and people and the style with which I'm shooting. I'm having more fun with than I did before. So therefore, I wouldn't discount anything that I've shot 10, 15 years ago as being iconic for me. But for the most recent past, that would be one of the images that I would consider to be iconic. Just like you wouldn't, yeah, if we're talking about Joe Meyerowitz, I mean, there's so many images that are iconic for him, right? What is it, Cape Light? His book called Cape Light on this, where in I forgot where it was, Rhode Island or wherever it was, and then his
Was it
street
Cape Cod?
Cape Cod. Thank you very much. And his street work. He's known for both. He's published images in both, and he's well known for both. So it's not hard to conceive of that being the case where individuals will have multiple iconic images associated with them, if not images that can fill a book
Right.
that can be considered iconic.
Well, they
Okay.
do that, right? I mean, the most famous photos. All right, good.
No.
That's it.
No, I'm going to close it out unless you guys have anything else to go. All right. So this has been a great conversation, and we hope that people will join us again for our next one. And to let them know that if they have any questions regarding what we discussed, just leave a comment down and below, and we'll reply. All right. Okay. Till next time.